Okay, so welcome to Tesena Fest Online. It's the second of 4 weeks of our 2021 Tesena Fest. Last week it was Marcel here because I was on a motorbike in the Italian Alps, so I wasn't able to moderate last week's. But I'm here, and I'll be here hopefully for the next 3 weeks. This week's theme is good practices. Last week we had real life stories, and this week it's about good practices. Why do we say good practices and not best practices? Because there are no such things as best practices. There are only good practices. And today we have 3 talks which are going to talk about good practices. Just give me a second. Oops, we're going again in the presentation. So first of all, we've got Christina. Sorry. Here I'm going to pronounce it properly. Thalayasingam. Did I get that right? Close. Good. And then we have Rudy and Vaska, and then we have finally Christian. First talk up today is Christina, who's going to talk about full stack testing is the new normal. And I've seen this presentation before, and it's fantastic. So Christina, if I could ask you to share your screen. We're using Slido for questions. The code is TFO21. So if you'd like to go to Slido and post there your questions, and we'll have a Q&A session after Christina's talk.
Right. Can you hear my screen? Can you see my screen, and can you hear me? Perfect. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Christina Thalayasingam, and I am a test engineering manager at Northwestern Mutual. I'm so glad to be part of this conference. It's my first time in this conference, and I'm really glad to be part of this conference. So I've been a part of test automation, functional and non-functional testing, and full stack testing for the past 6 to 7 years now. And I'm been part of various different meetups, and you might have seen me in a few other conferences as well in the past. I've been speaking since 2016 and just sharing whatever I know. I'm glad to share my Twitter handle with you, so you can tweet away as we speak. And also you could connect to me on LinkedIn if you have any further questions. Even after asking questions in this session, I am interested in having a chat with you, and interested in knowing your views about what we've been talking about today. Cool. So that's about myself. Let's jump into the talk. Before we get into the talk, I have a couple of questions for you. You could just ponder upon these and just see if you've been in this situation where you've been like Patrick, where the functionality of the application was working fine, and the silo teams, the performance testing teams, come into the picture and they start doing performance testing, and then they find issues, and this is very close to your release deadlines, okay? And then you would raise the issue, you get it fixed, and then now the functionality isn't working, right? Have you been in such a situation? I have been in, and it was kind of too late to actually get things fixed, because by this time things started breaking one after the other in each of the layers, because of the fact that they were not spotted at an early stage. And then you see changes everywhere, and you can't come to terms with fixing this issue, because a small issue has actually kind of caused something huge that would take a lot of time to get sorted. It can be fixed, but it just takes a lot of time to get sorted, and therefore you're stuck in moving forward with the testing. So you would want to talk about full stack testing when it comes to this. So full stack testing is what we're going to talk about. Now, this is a very, I won't say a rare term, but a term that we haven't spoken about a lot recently. And therefore, we want to talk about full stack testing is a virtue, and it's ethos. So we'll be talking about that because it is the new normal, and it is required in the new normal, right? What is this about the new normal? I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about what the expectations are. If you actually look at a job requirement, currently, either some companies openly say that they're looking for someone who has full stack testing qualities or skill sets, whereas there are some teams that actually mention all the skill sets and are looking for people who have those skill sets. Or most companies are looking to build teams who are full stack testing teams. So that's what we're going to cover. If you want to be part of the new normal, then you'll have to start getting used to full stack testing. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about the fact that full stack testing is what it is and how to become a full stack testing team, because you can't become a full stack tester overnight without being part of a team that is working towards their vision. It's not easy. So we'll talk about that, and then how full stack testing is going to be the stepping stones into getting a strong continuous testing process. And finally, we'll talk about the benefits of full stack testing. So what exactly is this full stack testing, right? You would have heard the term full stack testing or full stack developer, right? So basically, full stack developer is someone who knows, who is able to contribute for the development of the front end, the back end, understand the DB layer, and everything about the application in all layers. So in the same manner, a full stack tester has to have the ability to test quality of the feature end to end in all aspects, in all the layers, not only concentrate on UI, but should be able to see service level or API level checks as well. They should be able to test it, understand it. They should be able to troubleshoot if the API is not working, check what with the DB, is there something that's going wrong there? They should have the ability to troubleshoot and find where the issues are and look at all the layers and make sure that the application is actually working as expected in all layers and in all ways of testing. Like, it's not only functionality that you're going to be worried about, you also need to think about the non-functional aspects. End of the day, the application that you ship into production needs to be acceptable for the end user in all aspects. It needs to be acceptable in all layers, right? So that is basically full stack testing. Now, I was in one of the conferences like a year ago, and someone had asked this question from a speaker, and she basically mentioned saying that it's about knowing different languages and being able to automate and so on. Well, automation is definitely a skill set part of full stack testing, but it is not the overall full stack testing. You don't really necessarily have to know various different languages and stuff. Yeah, if it's a full stack developer, maybe that might play a role, but no, that's not how it works for a full stack test engineer. So why is full stack testing the new normal, right? Why is it the new normal? First of all, as I spoke to you before, there is an increase in demand of the skill sets that help for these changes, right? Everyone wants someone who is able to understand UI testing, is able to understand the service level testing and do performance and understand basic security testing. They want someone who has the ability to understand all these and be able to do those checks. So that's something that most of the companies and the teams are looking out for. So that is one of the key things why it is the new normal. And the ability to spot issues in functionality and in the non-functional specs in terms of overall quality at an early stage is very important. You don't want to be like Patrick in the initial image that I showed you, having a problem and seeing it at the latter part of things, right? And then you have this huge issue to fix and everything's falling apart. You don't want that to happen. So you want to narrow down those bugs at an early stage. You want to be able to communicate and get quick feedback, get them sorted faster as possible, and you don't want to have it till the end. You don't want to rely on the silo teams. Patrick relied on the silo team, again going back to my first image that I started talking about, and poor Patrick had a problem, or poor Patrick and SpongeBob, the whole team had a problem in actually having the silo team come and find the issues at a later stage, and things started falling apart, not because they found the issue. They definitely that was a good thing, but they found it at the wrong time, and therefore things were already kind of clamped up in terms of the work that was done for the application. So fixing it was a struggle. So that is what is something that we need to keep in mind. So the better the checking that was done is done in the earlier stage, and then we can worry about the more sophisticated checks maybe at a later stage. It depends on how the team moves forward, but eventually the team should be in a position to be able to do as many quality checks in all layers at an early stage. And it also helps in terms of, again, like in terms of feedback. Everyone knows what's going on. It's not just, you know, between like the developers and like silo teams, or just the test engineers, but it's between everyone, because you're doing, when you do a feature level test or a story testing, when all these are checked, everyone in the team is aware that there are issues, and then there is a great push to get it fixed. So as we spoke about why is full stack testing the new normal, let's talk about what is this stack that we're talking about. So this, yes, is a stack of pancakes, but what I'm trying to say here is that, yes, it's a huge stack of a lot of skill sets. And it is great that you could invest in this and become mature in all these skill sets. There could be a few skill sets that I haven't covered here, so I'll just talk about at the end of it. But there's more to it that you could add depending on how your team works and the needs for your team. Now, it is not only the technical skills that we have to focus on. So you need to have your soft skills in place as well when you're being a full stack tester, right? You can't only be very sound in your UI level functional testing, end-to-end testing, exploratory testing, and like service level and so on, but you also need to be able to gather the product expertise, effective, you should be an effective communicator, and if you're going to drive the entire process, leadership is key. You should understand the architecture and the design. You should have a system thinking. You should be able to think like the end user and expect what the end user would be thinking, so that you could suggest suggestions as well, so that you will be able to double check and see if, whether the product also thinks in that manner, and whether he or she also wants to implement those changes. Sometimes things can be missed, but as an end user, you need to think in the shoes of an end user, and that's very important as well, right? You should be able to then do the important testing skill sets that we are talking about, like test management, reporting, and then you should be able to understand unit testing and test-driven development, and try to help towards it, because most companies, I believe, that the unit testing and when it comes to test-driven development is driven by the developers, and some of the companies that I worked with, the test engineers would verify those tests and approve them, and then they would be shipped out into, merging the code and so on. So it depends on how your process would be, but that'll be a great process. So you can suggest a few other tests, and that can be tested in an early phase of things before even the application being deployed into whatever environment. You also have to have the CI/CD, because we're talking about full stack testing. So we're talking about having automation at some point and then moving into continuous testing. So continuous testing means continuous integration and development. You need to understand that. You need to have that idea in your mind so that you will be able to contribute to it. You should have the the ability to understand performance testing in various like service level, client side, and so on. You should have some basic level idea of security testing, and then code quality and coverage is also important. Now, some things that I haven't added in this list, which is kind of not common to most teams, but it is something that's also being looked out for, is like understanding accessibility testing, and also some teams require IoT and so on. So those are things that you can definitely add to this stack of pancakes, but that's something that you can look at as your team grows and the needs for testing grows. Add them to your team and let them also be able to grow within that. So yes, Jeannie just dropped his jaw and just told me that, are you saying that's a huge list of skill sets that one single person needs to have? Yes, it's going to be challenging, and I'm not saying it's not going to be. And therefore, I just want to leave you with this quote where, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can definitely change your direction. And that's what we're going to talk about. How can we change our direction so that we evolve in becoming a full stack testing team that works with the new normal, or basically falls in place or fits in to this new normal. As individuals, you would want to, obviously we are not going to always be in one place, and we would want to be able to have the ability to, or have all the skill sets. And in the same manner, within the current team that you are, you would want to spot these bugs at an early stage and not, fall into unnecessary hiccups too closer to your release and so on. So for that, let's talk about how can we move into full stack testing. First of all, you have to clean up your process. That is, you need to straighten up the existing process. Evaluate your process, see what works, and see what are the bottlenecks when it comes to full stack testing. Because now you want to do full stack testing, and you want to make sure that you have the right process in hand, and that it doesn't hinder the work that is going to be done by your team. So for that manner, you have to make sure that the process is straightened. Unnecessary checks or something that's not part of going to be in terms of a full stack testing approach needs to be omitted. You also need to make sure that you have certain important checks, like talk about a checklist. Let the team have the ability to come up with a checklist and be able to get certain questions answered while they talk about stories. Like, for example, is this story going to impact performance? Is this story going to have some change on the service level or DB side of things? Is there going to be a new DB schema that's going to be added, and so on? So these are discussions that you need to have, and that needs to fit into the process. And that's something that you need to think about. So the next very important thing is the tools that you choose. Now, today I will come and tell you that this tool worked well for my team, and why. And if I do give you such a talk, I will have to tell you that, well, we compared A, B, C tools, and A worked well for us over B and C because of certain reasons and because of our requirements. Now, that's something that you need to keep on in mind, because something might work for my team and something might not work. That same thing wouldn't work for your team. So when you choose your tools, make sure that you basically check it with your requirements, right? And do proof of concepts, right? And see what works well for the most difficult situations that you're going to face when it comes to testing, right? So see if it works with your tech stack, and it also depends on your daily workflow. Also, you need to be mindful that you're bringing in a new process. So the team needs to have the right set of skill sets so that they will be able to understand and use this tool a little more faster. If they require quite a lot of training, let's say if you have like about 5 people and all 5 of them need aggressive training to use this tool, then that's going to be challenging. If you have 5 team members and only 1 or 2 require aggressive training, then it's okay to consider it, given the fact that you can come up with a plan so that they will also be well trained and they will also come to that certain level. But that needs to be considered, okay? Because if not, your initial foundation itself is going to fall apart. You also need to think of ways how your team can be can integrate different type of testing. If it's something that you want to have like UI and so on, where it can be integrated with continuous integration. So these things that you need to think about before moving to the next steps. One main thing that next you need to have is a team who believes in this change, right? If you don't have the right people who are leading the team, the good shepherds, could be the leads, senior engineers, you wouldn't have the team believing in this change, and therefore it's going to be a drawback in terms of bringing this process. So you need to bring that proof of concept, sketch a meticulous plan, and make sure that you also show historical evidence. Like if you had a Patrick incident, when I say Patrick incident, going back to my first slide and saying, in case in the past you had such an incident, it might not be performance, maybe some other case, right? Bring that historical data and show that if this if full stack testing was what was practiced, things would be different. Also, they should consider company, you should consider the company priorities and project allocations, because depending on that is where you can move forward, because this is a difficult process. Getting your team to get hold of all these skill sets is going to be difficult, so they need time, right? It's not going to come like all over overnight, right? So you need to get them to get a plan that doesn't hinder their work, but they still get trained. So, and you need to discuss it with your management and so on, and get cooperation so that you can actually move forward with this. Finally, there's also the skill sets that we want as full stack testers. We're looking for jack of all trades. Now, I know this term has been used sometimes in a negative fashion. Well, I don't think that's the case here, because you could be a master of one and be a jack of all the other trades, right? So that's what we're talking about. So even though I have a team and a couple of my members, one of them is really, really good in her UI testing and her end-to-end testing skill sets. And there's another team member, she's more good in her API testing and really good in her automation skill sets. Now, both of them want to learn each other's skill sets. Now, they're masters of whatever the one skill sets that they have, but they want to be jack of those other skill sets as well. So therefore, we need the masters of one. So having that jack of all trades is basically having that diverse skill set in your team. If you have someone who has that knowledge, it's definitely good to have them part of your team. And they're definitely going to be a blessing. They'll be able to adapt and be flexible. They'll be able to help each other or the rest of the team members in learning. And they're going to be long-term learners because they have that thirst. They understand the skill sets already. They have the skill sets, so they understand it. So learning won't be much of a struggle. And they'll be a great fit to lead. So they can be those good shepherds who actually give that idea in terms of understanding how full stack testing is helpful. So talking about masters of one, we need that expertise. That's very important and that's very precious. So it's easily they can become jack of all trades. Like I was just telling you about two of my teammates, my team members that I'm managing, how they have different very strong skill sets, but they're training each other with their own skill sets so that they can learn from each other and they can become the jacks in the rest of the skill sets that they are not masters of, right? So therefore, you need masters of one because they're going to be your best friends to be creating a team of jacks. Because now we are not talking about, it could be someone from another team as well. Like you have a silo team. For example, a skill set like performance is pretty rare, you're unique, and you want that silo team, a member from that silo team, to come and train your team. So again, a master of one is coming and training your team with those skills. So that is also important, right? You could get that permission. Again, project allocations and company priorities also need to be considered here, but you could get that training as well, so your team gets this knowledge as well. So no more working in silos. Now you as a team, you're trying to learn from each other. So let's not rely on those silo teams. Yeah, let them come and do their checks at the last minute, but let's do our basic checks in an early stage, right? Let's do that basic level performance testing at an early stage, so that at least the obvious issues can be sorted out at an early stage, right? So you train each other, you help each other, like I was talking about in terms of teams. One of my teams, different members have different strong skill sets, and some of them are learning a new set of skill sets, and they train the others so that they will be able to learn from each other. And that is what is important in terms of having that team that can not or doesn't have to rely on those silo teams, and they can work together when it comes to difficult tasks, and that's very important. Now, where your question would be, okay, I want to become a full stack testing team. I've done all this. Where do I start? Now, don't start with something complex. I know when you do a proof of concept, you need to make sure that you select the difficult route and see how you can do the testing based on that. But when you are starting, don't start with something complex, because you want to cover all layers. And the team wants to believe in this full stack testing, so you need to start with something simple and let them be able to check each of the layers or all the types of testing that we spoke about, and then let them understand how good the process is. Now, it has happened to me that one of the teams that I'm managing had a concern where one of the testers weren't able to get the right results. They didn't feel like this was working out for them, but they were doing something wrong. So let's make sure that you have like a bi-weekly meeting or like a frequent meeting where you discuss about these pain points and problem statements or something that goes on, and also share like the best things that happened, right? So that maybe the test engineers can learn from each other and like, okay, I tried this, but this didn't work for me. Well, where the other test engineers like, oh, it worked really well for me. And then okay, so how did you do it, right? And then they realize, okay, they've been doing something wrong, and then they sort that out. So that kind of gets sorted. So there's a lot of communication, and there's a knowledge transfer. That's when you talk about knowledge, continuous learning. Now that's very, very important. I don't think this is only important to become a full stack test engineer or anything related to testing alone. It's continuous learning is important for everyone, right? In any sort of job or skill set that you are in, right? And therefore, again, continuous testing plays a major role in your full stack testing team to evolve and get better. You need to scrutinize what you're doing frequently. That's again, these bi-weekly meetings that you're going to have will help you understand maybe you're not doing the right thing, because it's something that might work for your team. Some things might not work for your team. So you want to scrutinize the process, understand what's going on in the industry, understand what works well for you, understand that what doesn't work well for you, and see if you can get a better solution for that, and see if you can enhance your process and help the team grow. Finally, I want to leave you with the importance of continuous testing. So as we got into full stack testing, one thing I wanted to mention to you was full stack testing is not automation testing. Automation testing is part of it. So you would definitely want to do all the checks manually. And then, once the team is mature and does understand all of them, then they can eventually get to a phase where they start automating all those checks, right? So once it comes to the phase of automating, you can then move into continuous testing. And the importance of continuous testing is you spot the bugs at an early stage, you have continuous improvement that's going on. And as this image says, there's a lot of space for defect prevention. You don't have those hiccups, and you're not having a falling apart application like how Patrick is having, right? again, Patrick, from the first slide. So yes, so this is the overall idea. As you do your full stack testing, then it gets automated. Once it's automated, adding it part of your continuous testing is no big deal. It's basically, once you have that continuous integration, continuous deployment ideology and that mindset, and you start learning it and understanding it, you have a person who's already well versed in it in your team. Moving your full stack approach into continuous testing wouldn't take much time, right? So all those skill sets will be then applicable and will be part of continuous testing, will make things more easier. And you could definitely, going back to the previous slide, you would be seeing more improvement, and you'll be definitely identifying the defects and preventing them at a very early stage. Finally, I want to leave you with the benefits of being a full stack testing team. You are now going to have a versatile team, right? Because they are going to be able to understand all these aspects. So now, as I spoke about one of the teams that I'm managing, so one of my test engineers who's really good in her UI testing, exploratory testing, and so on, now is having the ability to understand API and realize that, you know, you can do verifications. This is definitely a different conversation, but I just wanted to say is that you could do verifications on the UI by using the API responses and so on, which makes it more valuable rather than just looking at the UI aspect of things. The same way for the person who writes the API automation, now she can leverage her skills and also, you know, see if she can help with the UI automation and, you know, do the data creation and so on with the service level calls, and, you know, help with contributing to the UI automation in the same manner and coming up with solid tests with, like, you know, preconditions and so on. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of a team that has vast experience. They have all inclusive work. So if there's an issue and they are troubleshooting this issue, when they write the bug, they'll make sure that they look at all the layers. Is this because of a performance issue? Is this because of something wrong with the DB? They have that ability to troubleshoot. And this is definitely a time friendly and budget friendly approach, because you're going to spot the issues at an early stage and you're not waiting till the last moment. Now, there's more ownership to quality. I definitely test engineers cannot be mentioned as quality engineers. It's definitely a different conversation, but you can contribute. Definitely, test engineers are the main people who contribute in terms of making sure the project quality is intact, and therefore this is really helpful process in making that. And finally, continuous learning is one of the solid stones in terms of moving into full stack testing. Finally, I just want to leave you with some setbacks that you need to be mindful of. As you're moving into becoming a full stack testing team, you're working hard, you're getting your team to work hard, but make sure that the productivity of the team and the time is managed correctly and they do not fall back because they are moving into this. So that has to be wisely managed and monitored so that your team is not falling apart, or, like, you know, their productivity is getting affected because of this. So that needs to be given thought to. You might not be able to keep up with the current trends, so you need to have that continuous lookout. Best thing is to allocate each of the team members to keep looking out there if, you know, the new trends are, for example, for performance testing, one of the teams that I worked with, there was a new addition in the tool, and then the team was aware of it. So that is something that you need to be able to continuously look out there, but you need to give that time, and that's something that is kind of difficult, so you'll have to sort that out. Finally, there might be confusion with the team members in terms of responsibility, because now everyone can pick up all sorts of stories to test. So make sure that it's clearly communicated, and, like, when someone is going on holiday, like, nobody should assume that, you know, someone can pick it up and move forward. So therefore, that is something that you need to decide upon. So finally, I want to leave you with not a mouse and an elephant, but start as a mouse and aim to be an elephant, or start small and aim big. Thank you for having me at Tesena. And these are the references that I've used. And these are the questions. I'm good to have ask any questions now.
Okay. Thank you, Christina. That's a fantastic presentation from my point of view. It is lots of very interesting concepts. Each one could be an individual presentation from my point of view. Okay, for those which joined late, questions we're posting on Slido. The code for Slido is TFO, O as in online, not as in 021. I'm just going to share the Slido now. So the first question we have is from David. Hi, David. We know each other. So are you successful in hiring such full stack testers? Are they commonly available on the market, or do they grow within the company?
Yeah, very good question. So recently I have been struggling to hire someone that was in with a similar skill set. So yes, it is difficult, and therefore what I suggest we do is, and which we are doing currently as well, is to make sure that you decide on which skill set you are looking for the most in this person, and make sure that you pick that person and see if that person can grow and is now willing to learn and has the thirst to learn the other skill sets. We don't want someone who's a master of one and isn't interested in learning anything else because of the fact that he or she is a master of that one skill set, or a few skill sets. So that's what personally I've been looking for while trying to recruit someone. But yeah, it's been a struggle in getting a complete full stack tester matching all the requirements that we have. But definitely you can nurture and grow someone within the team, and it takes a while, but you could get there. So I would say nurturing and growing would be better an approach, but whoever you absorb in the team would be someone who is willing to learn and master of some skill set that you really need for the team.
Okay, good answer. I think the nurturing and growing is necessary, because the full stack tester is not something that already exists in most cases. They're very rare. So the next question is from Jurka. How do you motivate people to do the changes towards the new normal? So how do you bring in this mindset?
Right. First of all, one of the important things is that, speak about the current trends, ask them to, look at different blogs as well, and show them the proof that, outside in the world, sometimes some people, team members, they're just within the company, they've been there in the company for a long time, so they think it's all right to, have the certain skill sets that they have. It's been working well for them. But in order to motivate them, you need to speak about the current trends. You need to speak about what has fallen apart, or some sort of historical evidence of things not working well, and how it could have been prevented if we had the full stack testing skill sets. And that really helps a lot. And then they realize, okay, yeah, that's like a wake-up call. Well, we need to know some performance testing, otherwise we wouldn't have spotted this issue, and these got spotted later. So that kind of approach really helps. Yeah.
Thank you. And the next question is from Peter Michalisko. What about UX testing? Is it part of full stack testing? Example, we have a prototype ready, then interview and review it with users, then bring feedback to the team. Is that part of your full stack for testing?
Yeah, so full stack testing is not limited to the list that I showed you. So that's what I'm saying, was like, if I didn't have accessibility testing in it, but then again, that's experience as well. So UX testing, if it plays a major role in your product, or the project that you work for, you definitely need to have that skill set within your team, in the testing team, and they should have the skill sets in this particular question. They should have the skill sets not only to do UX testing, but also like communicate and understand if that works well for the end user. So that's something that's important, and yes, that will definitely be a skill set for your team. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. There was a comment up there which disappeared. No, it's still there. It's the third one down. I like the T-shaped skill metaphor. You cannot be a specialist in everything. And I just wanted to call that one out. I know it's not highly voted, but for me, that's the key of your presentation. You're not looking for those specialists in everything. You're building a team dynamic.
Yes.
Which creates you a specialism in everything, but it's not dependent on one person. So,
right.
Then, yeah. Okay. So I think that's one of the key points in the presentation. Yeah. So I just wanted
thumbs up for that. Yeah.
I just wanted to jump to that question, even though it wasn't highest voted. And I'll take one last question because we're supposed to take a break now for 5 minutes. So it's from Marosh. Do full stack testers sound like a very rare and highly paid person. Do you think that every tester needs to move to this approach?
I believe going forward, you will be in the position to move to this approach. As if if you're looking out, if you just look at the skill sets that's required in most of the teams out there, that's something that is evolving. And if you see, that's why I called it the new normal, is that's something that's really important. So you would be in that position, but it is up to you. If your team is not encouraging you, you could definitely take some time and start learning, but it's definitely a very difficult approach if you're going to do it by yourself. That's why I'm saying that we have to work in becoming a full stack testing team, and not a full stack tester. That doesn't really work very easily. But it's difficult, but it's definitely something that you might need to move into in the future. And I believe that future is already here.
Okay. Thank you very much. I repeat, I think that's a fantastic presentation. I've seen it once before, and I was taking lots of notes. And there's certainly things which I think in Tesena, my company Tesena, there's something in there that we want to adopt already. We've heard something in that presentation we'd really like to pick up and implement in our own company. So thanks for that inspiration. I think that's a good example of a good practice, and we're going to try and adopt that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me.
It's been a great pleasure. Okay, so it's 2:45, break over. I have to start smiling again. So next up is Rudy and Vaska, who are going to talk about adaptive learning, how RBI solved the learning revolution with adaptive workplace learning. So if you would like to share your presentation, I hand the stage over to you.
Thank you very much, Phil. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our presentation on learning revolution in RBI. I'm sharing my slides, and I hope that you can see them already.
We can see them in your view, not the full presentation view. If you could just switch the view.
All right.
For me, it is okay.
Yeah, okay.
So this is the full view.
All right. So do you see learning revolution and this nice gentleman on the right-hand side?
Yes.
All right. So this is everything you see. Yeah.
Yes, I see what we have. I see from the rehearsal.
Yeah.
Go with it.
Okay, I'm going with it. Okay, perfect. So, maybe just to recap, the gentleman on the right-hand side, I'm sure that many of you recognize him. This is Mr. Charles Darwin, and you know about his theory that it's not the strongest that survives, and it's not the most intelligent, but it's the one that is most adaptable to change, right? And if we think of this theory and how we could translate it into our learning context, I think the best way to describe it would be if we say that we must learn things faster, and we must learn the things when we need it. Or in other words, the digital Darwinism that we're mentioning here means for us lifelong learning. So the most valuable capability and the most valuable skill of our employees within the organization is the ability to learn. So it's the competence of organizing your own learning and to be responsible for your own learning process. And if we compare this type of learning to the traditional learning processes, the difference is mainly in the fact that you do not learn to acquire certain qualifications or only to acquire certain certificates, qualifications, which you might or not might use immediately. The purpose of the learning is moreover to solve the problems and to have those solutions that can help you in the process of work in your own manner. In the next 25 minutes, my colleague Rudy and I are going to explain you how we approach the transformation of the traditional learning in Raiffeisen Bank International, and moreover, what are the benefits for the learners, for the employees. In the first part, in my part, I'm going to set up the stage. I'm going to give you some background information and also some theory behind the learning revolution. And then Rudy will demonstrate you this with a concrete example from our organization. So let's continue with very shortly presenting ourselves. You heard from few, my name is Vaska, family name is pronounced Zaykova. I am originally from Bulgaria. I moved to Vienna 10 years ago, and I joined the Raiffeisen Bank International in the second half of 2017. My current position is with the team in Group IT in Vienna head office. It's called Transformation and Workforce Management. And among other tasks related to workforce on a group level, my main task is Ukrainian Delivery Center transformation. I will tell you about this a little bit later. Now I want to hand over to Rudy. So Rudy, maybe a few words about you.
Okay, so thank you, Vaska. Welcome from my side too. So I'm an HR engineering coach in RBI. That means I support teams in helping them that they have appropriate test automation, CI/CD, DevOps approaches, and so on. In addition to that, I'm the guild lead for the RBI Test and Test Automation Guild, and I'm also an Agile Learning Guide. What does this mean? You will see later. And in addition to that, I'm the organizer of the Agile Test Automation Meetup Vienna with more than 1,200 members, and I'm organizing 6 times per year the so-called Test Busters Night. So back to Vaska. Vaska, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Rudy. Now, maybe just a few words about Raiffeisen Bank International. Who is Raiffeisen Bank International? We consider Austria, Central and Eastern Europe to be our home markets. We are represented in this region via 13 network banks, and we also have other subsidiaries. In Austria, we are leading corporate and investment bank for the top 1,000 commercial customers in the country. We have more than 47 employees group wide and 16.8 million, I think in the meantime even more when it comes to clients from all sectors. And we are going through an adaptive transformation. We use this very nice metaphor here in our organization when we talk about transforming us. We are going away from this big, heavy container ship on the left-hand side towards those speedboats, those self-organized speedboats that represent actually the teams with the entrepreneurial spirit. And for us, adaptive it's not the purpose itself, but it's a tool to realize the better impact. And of course, this is our basis for being competitive in this rapidly changing environment that we live in. We started with this transformation in 2017, and 4 years later, we have more than 1,000 employees working in agile product, platform, and service teams. And yes, this began in head office Vienna, but it was spreading very quickly to other units. So we noticed the need for holistic transformation in other units across the group as well. And for example, this happened for us in the Ukrainian Delivery Center. Just to give you a brief overview, what is the Delivery Center about? It was created in 2016 with the main goal to help the organization to bridge the skill gaps in terms of IT qualifications. So what started as a very small team, in the meantime grew up to 106 employees. And those employees are working on 14 different projects for the Raiffeisen Bank Group. Our main customer is Raiffeisen Bank Ukraine. But we also have many projects with Raiffeisen Bank Vienna and, for example, also Raiffeisen Bank Croatia. So what we have there is we have a team that was growing very, very quickly, but we didn't have the right structures, the right mindset and way of work to meet this growth demand. We have excellent experts, but there were no initiatives to support the development of the people, to retain them and to give them the feeling of growth. And then we had the IT market with huge potential, but we were not present. We were not recognized in the IT community in the local market. So we realized that the UDC, the delivery center, needs to be holistically transformed in order to support our group IT strategy and to adhere to the RBI group transformation. So it had to become one of those small speeding boats that are supporting transforming the big ship. And we decided with three main streams in terms of structuring the transformation. Of course, first we look into the organizational setup. We wanted to go away from this workbench approach towards product-oriented setup. So we wanted to go into the direction of product company. The second pillar, of course, on its own is the agile transformation. We had to change the way we work. We had to also tackle the cultural aspect here. And the third part is the HR transformation, because whatever we do, it will not work if we don't have the right people in the right place. I mean, I could talk about each and every of those pillars for a very long time, but today is about training and development. So I will use this as a stepping stone toward my next slide, which is about learning. So we're coming slowly to the core of our talk, learning at RBI. So in our company, we do have different possibilities to learn. So we have on the one hand side the traditional ways of learning, individual training. You find a training somewhere outside of the organization. You go to your manager, ask for permission to learn and to attend this training, organize it on your own, and then that's it. The second part is the learning management system. So of course, we have something that is maintained by our HR department for learning and development in Vienna. We call it Charlie. So in Charlie, you can also find very nice offerings and possibilities to learn. But again, you have to register, you have to wait for approval. Maybe you cannot find place in the group and you have to wait on the waiting list and so on. And for IT, for our department, we created something in addition. We wanted to have something special here. It's an initiative that is maintained by my team, Transformation and Workforce Management, called Go IT Academy. I will tell you a few more words about the Go IT Academy on my next slide. Here, the point was that traditional ways were fine. They were okay, but they were not enough. So in the course of the transformation, we started looking into new ways. So we recognized the need to add to those traditional formats. And we came to Workplace Academy and Agile Learning Guides, just to mention two of those. When it comes to workplace learning or the Workplace Academy, I mean, the name is quite intuitive, right? So you can think that it's about work, bringing learning close to work, right? The goal is to overcome something practical that came up during your daily job. So you're not learning to acquire certifications, but the learning should enable you to really solve something that popped up now in your work. And in our company, this type of learning is facilitated and is enabled by Agile Learning Guides such as Rudy, and he will tell you later on how this works in practice. Now, one step back to our traditional learning, so you can understand also the context that we were coming out of. The Go IT Academy. The name suggested is an IT academy for learning and development on group level. So we were including all the units. We have 19, not only banks, but also further subsidiaries. And I think more than 100 participants are expected in 2021. And in the circle here, you can see all the programs that are part of the portfolio of the Go IT Academy. And all of them are very tightly related to strategically important competences. In its traditional approach, each program of the Go IT Academy has fixed content, it has fixed schedule, it has pre-selected participants. So they're created usually for up to 20, 25 participants in one round. And you can see here one example that we brought with us, the test automation program. So this program was created last year. So we created the basics, and the goal was, of course, to support one of the main strategic capabilities in our organization, namely the test automation. So we started with basics, and this year we developed also the advanced part. And this was really a huge success, and it still is a huge success. So we had to come up with multiple groups with multiple rounds. And while doing this, while preparing those rounds, we faced the fact that such approach of fixed contents, fixed training schedule, fixed group, so one group has to learn the same things, does not really allow for flexibility, and it's not easy to scale. So we needed to amplify this. So we needed something to add here to the academy. And this is when we recognized that learning revolution has to happen for us here in the company. When we talk about the learning revolution, we characterize it with two main aspects. We have the performance problem, and we have new learning formats. So learning is considered to be a performance support, something that serves you to solve problems during your daily job. And it's not only to accumulate knowledge, right? So learning and applying, and not learning and storing, is the motto here. And maybe just to give you an example for performance problems. So we have Max. Max has the task to learn automate tests, but let's say he has no idea how to do it. In a traditional approach, Max would go in our learning management system. He will search for some courses, he will register, then he will have to go through those contents with 20 other people. Maybe they will not fit his individual needs. Maybe he will not even get a place and he has to wait for it. We don't know, right? In an agile approach, or in the new way of learning, Max will get an opportunity to create a learning journey for himself. Not only this, but we will give him the support of an agile learning guide who can additionally add to the needs, so that Max can solve his problems very easy in the workplace. Oh, sorry. And for us, that means that learning has to be close to the workplace. So in order for you to solve your problems, you have to bring work and learning very, very closer. So it has to become self-served, it has to become self-paced, and you also have to get the chances of exchange regardless of the time and regardless of the place. And of course, you can think that face-to-face classroom, even if it's online, is no longer enough. So we really needed to include a blended learning approach. And for us, blended learning means really this easy combination, this easy mix of different learning formats. And those are mainly for flexibility and this individual learning. So own pace, own path. Of course, that would mean that learning is no longer an event, but it's a process. So we are talking about learning process. And last but not least, the learning is very, very tightly connected to your work and helps you to solve your concrete performance problems. And I think that was enough context and theory. Maybe let's look at the special implementation of a blended learning approach that Rudy will present you now. So Rudy, the mastermind behind the Test Automation Academy and the mastermind behind our new learning architecture, stage is yours.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, can you see my screen? Can you see?
Yes.
Yes, Rudy.
Learning architecture. Okay, so, well, first, thanks to Vaska. So, to implement this blended learning, this workplace learning, we created our new way of learning, our learning architecture. This architecture is not only for test and test automation. You could use it for every other topic like DevOps, cloud, or whatever. Yeah. So yes. So This is our learning architecture, and our learning architecture is divided into following parts. Yeah. So first we have learning topics. The learning topics for the Test Automation Academy is we have test engineering, we have test automation foundation, we have test automation adapters, and adapters are the tools which you can use for automate things, for instance, for web UI, for API, for mobile, for desktop, whatever. And then the last one is the test automation development per adapter, per programming language. That means here you learn how to automate the web UI with Java or with C# or with JavaScript, or mobile with Java and so on. And then a learning topic has subtopics. For example, the Test Automation Foundation has the subtopics test methods, test automation, test development, CI/CD DevOps, and others. And then we have the skills, the competency levels. Yeah, you know this. Yeah, these are this basic, advanced, expert. Yeah, I think it is not necessary that I go here into the details. And then last but not least, we have our learning elements, and the learning elements are the trainings. Yeah, so this you can see here. A learning element could be an e-learning course at Udemy, Pluralsight. It could be an RBI training. It could be a recording from an already delivered Go IT Academy training. It could be a blog. It could be a book. It could be a YouTube video. And it also could be a one-to-one peer session with a learning expert. And then we have the key element. And the key element are our learning journeys. Yeah? And a learning journey has a learning outcome, a competency which you want to achieve at the end of your journey. And this is the learning outcome for our test automation journeys. Yeah. So the learner can develop automatic basic tests with the given programming language. You can replace this with Java, C#, whatever, for a given adapter. This could be web UI, mobile, API, whatever. A learning journey has a beginning and an end and supports the learner to solve his or her performance problem. Remember the performance problem from Max. In practice, however, such an approach does not always do justice to the complexity of blended learning, because depending on the role and or the competence of the learner, there can be different starting and different endpoints and different learning elements, but the impact is the same. Yeah, it can solve the performance problem. And to handle this diversity, we have the last brick in our learning architecture, and the last brick, these are our learning paths. And as an example, yeah, so imagining following need is the outcome of a performance interview. Diana, a test engineer with no development skills and no test automation skills, should automate web UI tests with Java. What would be Diana's learning path? This would be the learning path of Diana. Diana would start with test automation foundation, then followed by test automation adapters, and then test automation development. Diana do not need test engineering. This is the first box, yeah, since she is a tester. She has all this knowledge. Okay, and then think about a Java developer. Yeah, how a learning path for a Java developer could look like. Here you see Bruce. Bruce is a Java developer with no testing skills and no test automation skills, and he should automate web UI tests with Java. Bruce would need more or less the same as Diana, only that the path starts with the test engineering topic, since Bruce has no testing skills. And from the web UI test automation, we do not need Java programming because Bruce is a Java developer. As you can see, the same goal, the same journey, but two different paths. And now the question is, imagine 6 months later, Bruce should also automate API tests with Java. What would be the learning journey or the learning path? Yes, this would be the learning path for the API stuff. And Bruce needs only the test automation adapters for API. That's all, not more, not less. I guess you know now what is a learning journey and what is a learning path and how this is connected to our learning initiative. And now I show you a real life example where the learner is supported by a learning guide and organize his learning in so-called agile learning sprints. As a first step, the guide is discussing the goals, the performance problems, and the challenge with the learner to get all the details. These are the so-called metadata. And a learning guide supports the learner comprehensively and individually in their learning process. In the second step, the guide creates together with the learner the learning path out of the learning journey. This you can see here, and this is the learning path. The selected learning elements are marked with yes, these are the red ones. And then here you can see the link behind the learning elements, the costs for these learning elements, from the financial perspective and also from the effort. And then the other three, here you see these are learning paths from other learners, and I'm pretty sure that you spot the differences. For instance, this other learning path is for a developer, for a Scrum Master, and for a tester. Transfer tasks are an important concept and the key in our agile workplace learning. So suitable tasks from the company practice in which these competencies are needed are identified, and then we define the transfer task. So a transfer task makes sure that the learner applies the new skill sets directly, immediately, in everyday's life, and that the upskilling has a value for the team. I'm pretty sure you know these trainings, where you go to a training for 1 week, and then you cannot use it for the next 5 weeks, or it fits not to your daily work and so on. With this approach, it is guaranteed that the learning effort is producing immediately impact to the daily work. And the outcome of these transfer tasks will then be presented during the agile learning sprint review, maybe together with the team. Yes, and then after the planning conversation, the self-directed learning phase, we call it learning sprints, begins, in which the aim is to implement the transfer tasks after working on the learning elements. That means the learner is working with the learning elements and try to use this immediately for his transfer task for the team. During the learning sprint, the learner acts on his own, which does not mean that he or she is on his own. So He works on the learning elements which are provided by the learning coach and by the learning experts. He exchanges ideas with colleagues in so-called learning groups, and possibly takes part in learning communities. In any case, the learning coach, the learning guide, and the learning expert should be easily accessible as a contact person during the sprint. Well, so that was our journey to bring an agile learning approach into RBI, into UDC. Now we have some lessons learned for you. First, there is no one size fits all. In agile learning, the aim is to give the learner as much freedom and autonomy for the learning process as necessary. Not each type of the learning approach works for each learner. We have people who works we have to get the upskilling with the Go IT Academy, because they said, so I cannot do this in this self-organized way, and so on. So a Generation Z employer needs another approach than a baby boomer. And offering different learnings is the key to success. Yes, as I said before, the self-organized learning. So agile learning combines self-organization and self-directed learning. And this requires special metacognitive skills and competencies, since here the learner has to take on tasks that in the old way of learning was taken over by the coaches, by the trainer, the seminar leaders, professors, or lecturers, and so on. We have seen that one of the biggest challenges is that the majority of the learner fails in organizing their learning process on their own. Then, dedicated learning time. No matter how much you embrace or reward the skill development, if your team member feels like they don't have the time to develop new skills, they are not going to do it. So encourage the learner to block out specific time to concentrate on skill development. For instance, my block time is every Friday from 7 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock. This is my learning time. And then, last but not least, it is about the digital competence. And here we talk about the trainers, because the new learning formats requires new skills on the part of the trainer. Their skills in face-to-face training, often built up over decades, are not sufficient to be able to safely apply the other learning formats. We have seen some of our trainers, they brought the classroom style training into a e-learning format, but this doesn't work. And here the nice thing is the teacher has to become a learner again, a role that is not easy for everyone. So we are perfect in time. That's my last slide. We are done, and now we have time for questions.
Okay, just first of all, a reaction from me. Wow. I obviously, as a company in software testing, we're dealing with professional development the whole time, and I think we're quite proud of what we can do. But that's really next level. I'm really impressed, and I can see that we see problems and we see bottlenecks and the things, and you found a solution there. I've got 1,000 questions, but unfortunately our audience have questions which I have to present before theirs. So if there's, I don't think there will be time. There's quite a lot of questions. So the first question was, what is the biggest challenge in transforming the UDC to Agile? It's a little bit off topic, but I think it's interest to everybody. Agile transformation.
Yeah. So I would try to be brief. First, the biggest challenge is the cultural aspect, because you have to teach also the clients you're working with that we have now new way of work, guys, and you know the clients needs to change as well. So the biggest challenge we face is not really to change ourselves that much. Of course, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's rather to say it to the clients as well, you know. So this is one of the biggest that comes now on top of my mind.
Okay, thank you. And the next question from David again. How do you, sorry, the next question is from EU. How do you cope with remote approach in learning? Good question. How does last year's experience change your approach in remote work and cooperation? I think this is a very good question. So how do you deliver the training remotely, and how do you deal with it?
Rudi, should I take this or you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How did you cope with remote approach in learning? So I would tell you from the experience from the Go IT Academy, Go IT Academy was created as an on-site initiative, right? So all the trainings were happening on-site. And what we had to change is last year, from day 1 to day 2, we had to switch the whole learning. So the people were not allowed to come here in Vienna or wherever we were meeting in the group to see each other, but they had to sit at home, learn, and deal with all the other tasks that pop up during their daily life. Not only work related. I'm talking also about family related and personal stuff, right? So the biggest challenge for us here was to make the people attend the trainings, because they were always finding a good excuse not to, you know, and we were not really you cannot really follow the people what they're doing, right? So this was one thing that we were really having difficulties with. And maybe Rudi wants to add something outside of the Go IT.
This changing to remote learning, for the part of the HR learning part of this workplace academy works very well, because as Vaska said, there is not always time that you participate in the Go IT Academy in these 3-day trainings and so on, and with this workplace learning, sorry, you can learn whenever you want, whatever you want, at your own pace. Okay, if you need a sparring with a learning expert, then maybe there is a dependency, then you have to address this. But today I had a learning review with a learner, and the learner said, for me it works perfect. I like it because now I can work at 6 o'clock in the morning. I can use the learning elements in the during the commute in the train and so on. And I can learn on Sunday. It's awesome.
Okay. I can see that. Okay. The next question from David this time. How do you select individuals into particular learning path program? How do you measure the learning path has been successfully passed, and what if not? Good questions. I think there's several questions.
I would like to answer that. So the selecting the individuals, so these are, there we have different types. It could be that a person comes to me and tells me, I want to learn test automation for blah blah blah. It could be that we have a so-called job architecture, with different levels and so on, so which is used in the yearly performance meeting, as an outcome, of that could be, that the employer and the manager decide, yes, you have to go to the Go IT Academy, or you have to learn test automation for APIs and so on. Not on KPIs. Every of the sprint, in the sprint you have the so-called transfer task. You can compare it with acceptance criteria, and these acceptance criteria, will be presented at the end of the learning sprint, to the learning guide and if it makes sense to the team. Yeah. So if the person cannot fulfill the acceptance criteria, yeah, these are small things, yeah, then you see it was not successful. And if it is not, to be honest, currently I'm working with 15 people, yeah, it works. Yeah, maybe after scaling to 100 people, yeah, it doesn't work, but until now, every person, yeah, has more or less fulfilled the acceptance criteria. And this is this little shot of dopamine, yeah, when you presenting what you did.
Okay, great. Any next question from you again? Any experience from different cultures from the involved countries? How do you handle that? I think it's very relevant for such a big group, international group.
Yes, so there is a difference between learning with people from, for instance, Albania or Romania and so on. Yeah, yeah. So, but due to the fact that this is a individual stuff. Yeah. So the learning guide, yeah, has to consider that. Yeah. And to discussing if the acceptance criteria are fulfilled or not, yeah, maybe is harder, yeah, if you're talking to a person from the head office or with a person from Romania, yeah, which has another point of view regarding that. Yeah, but there is a difference for that. And sorry, Vaska, yeah, and some of them says I do not need that. Yeah, so these are also some from the countries. Yeah, some countries say, wow, yeah, great. Others says, no, we do not need this.
I mean, I've been leading the Grötz Academy for quite a while, and we've been bringing people from all the countries, from Albania, Kosovo, Romania, Russia, Ukraine. It was really a cultural mix. But one thing that you have to be really careful, and I think it's the only thing you should assess, is who is proactive and who is reactive, because there are people who are coming to you and saying, I need to learn this, I would like to do this, I would like to do that, how about this? And then you have the other part of the people who are just taking whatever you give them. So you really need to be careful who you are talking to in order to adapt your approach here.
Okay, so okay, and I'm going to take one final question. Who is delivering the training? Could you recommend some good sources and trainings? I think you mentioned quite a lot of different sources, but yeah, the best ones.
So maybe from the when we talk about the Go IT Academy, yeah, there we are going to the usual suspects. Yeah, when we talk about the workplace learning, yeah, so we are using everything, yeah, what we have is from the internet or from our from our own created elements. But of course, we also use Udemy, we use Pluralsight, we use LinkedIn Learning and so on. And here again, it depends on the people, because some people, yeah, do not want to learn with Udemy. It is not okay to say that, yeah, but I cannot work with Udemy, yeah, and with Pluralsight. I like LinkedIn learning courses, yeah, they are awesome. And other people say, oh, come on, LinkedIn learning, no, I like Udemy and so on, yeah. And we have a great source is the Applitools Test Automation University. Yeah. So for our basic journeys, yeah. So more or less, I would say 80%, yeah, is from the Test Automation University. You find everything, yeah, and it is free of charge. It is awesome, yeah.
I fully second that. I'm on my own test automation journey on Test Automation University, and it's awesome. Even an idiot like me can.
Come on.
Okay, an idiot like me can learn some. I wrote my first automation script with JavaScript, and I was
Vaska, we have an application.
Yes, guys, go. Yes, Fero, very nice approach. How could I join? Just, let me know. We have plenty of projects. We have plenty of locations. So if you want to work in Ukraine, we can make this happen. If you want to work in Vienna, we can make this happen. So let us know. Send us your CV, and then we find the right project for you.
Maybe one last sentence. We had 1.5 years ago a meetup in Vienna where we presented this. No, it is 2 years ago because it was in person. Yeah, where we presented the first approach of that. Yeah, and at the end, two people from the audience came to us and told us, so awesome. I would like to work in your company, because you take care of me. Yes, this is what we are doing. Take care that our people can grow.
Definitely.
Yes,
back then was the other way around. You were our guest, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oh, yes. That's when Rudy irritated me with his clock, if I remember.
Yes.
No mercy.
I had to give away prizes to get extra 5 minutes.
Yes.
It was very expensive.
It was like blackmailing you that you get 3 additional minutes.
Yeah, that was just before the lockdown. Yeah. Nice to think back at those. I repeat again, I think that what I saw today is absolutely awesome. I'm inspired by it. We are somewhere on that journey, and I think we can learn a lot from you. Again, great example of a good practice. And I'm going to go and see my head of HR, and I'm going to say, watch this presentation, please. I think there's a lot here we can learn from. Definitely, I'm not kidding. Yeah. I'm going to see him straight after the end of today's Tesena Fest. So, okay, we've now got a 5-6 minute break. We're going to continue at 16:35 with Christian. So once again, thank you, Vaska, and thank you, Rudy. Fantastic presentation, and very nice to talk to you again. Hopefully,
have a good day.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm looking forward to this presentation because when I looked, I did don't be a fool with the tool. I did it in Google search and it came up with some very interesting results. So, so I think this is a topic we hear about a lot. People get into trouble with test automation and test automation tools. So I think this is going to be a really good presentation. So if you would like to start sharing your slides, and
yeah, let me try to do that.
I'll hand over the stage to you.
So you can see it?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start. Hello and welcome to my talk. Don't be a fool with the tool, fundamental knowledge for proper test automation. My name is Christian Baumann and I'm a software tester. For more about me, you can check out my Twitter. There's a link to my different profiles in my bio. When tweeting about this talk, please use the hashtag Tesena Fest. A note before we start. I'm showing quite some diagrams and code examples. Whenever such a slide is shown, I'll make a short break to give you the chance to digest the content. Otherwise, you will be busy reading and understanding and will not be able to focus on that well on what I am saying. Let me explain you what this talk is about. Many people get into test automation without having a profound background in programming or without receiving any proper training. They have some idea about what tool to use, gathered some basic knowledge, and managed to create some automated tests with it. But at a certain point, you suspect that something is not quite right with your automation. Your code feels messy and maintaining it is hell, costs a lot of time, and frustrates you. Don't worry, this talk has you covered. I'll talk about test automation strategy, object-oriented programming principles, the idea of clean code, and test data generation. Basically, I'll cover the things I wished I had known more than 15 years ago when my test automation journey began. Each of these topics is huge, so this talk cannot cover them all in detail, but it is intended to give you some hints and starting points for further studies and research. Way too often, people immediately jump into coding their test automation without having a strategy or plan at hand. Usually, this leads to a lot of problems. So what about a test strategy or a test plan, or maybe both? But what's the difference between a test strategy and a test plan? Or are they just different words for the same thing? According to the black box software testing definition by Kena and Buck, a test strategy answers the question, given a testing mission, how will you achieve it? Where they define test strategy as the set of ideas that guide your test design, logistics as the set of ideas that guide your application of resources, and test plan as the combination of your strategy, your logistics, and your project risk management. Having a strategy and/or a plan in place for your test automation helps to eliminate a lot of unclarity and guides you throughout the project and thus reduces the chance of failure. Asking questions helps you to formulate your strategy and plan. What is the goal for the test automation and what shall be accomplished? What should be tested? Who should do the automation and in what capacity? How to plan for the execution of the strategy? How to test? When to test? Where to test? Also, models can be of great help when formulating a test automation or a test strategy in general. According to Michael Bolton, good models are a set of guidelines to help us solve a problem. This is also true for test automation. Common models used to guide your test automation are the test automation pyramid and the automation wheel. There are more, like the software testing ice cream cone or the agile testing quadrants. But please keep in mind that models are not quite reality. All models are wrong. Some are useful. Next, let's talk about the 4 basic principles in object-oriented programming: encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. Let's have a closer look at each of them. Say we have a program. It has a few logically different objects which communicate with each other according to the rules defined by the program. Encapsulation is achieved when each object keeps its state private inside a class. Other objects don't have direct access to this state. Instead, they can only call a list of public functions called methods. So the object manages its own state via methods, and no other class can touch it, unless explicitly allowed. If you want to communicate with the object, you should use the methods provided, but by default, you can't change the state. Abstraction can be seen as a natural extension of encapsulation. In object-oriented design, programs are often pretty large, and so can your test automation be. Separate objects communicate with each other a lot, so maintaining a large code base like this for years, with changes along the way, is difficult. Abstraction is a concept aiming to ease this problem. Applying abstraction means that each object should only expose a high-level mechanism for using it. This mechanism should hide internal implementation details. It should only reveal operations relevant for the other objects. Think about your phone. It does a lot of fancy stuff under the hood, but all you have to do is push certain buttons and touch the screen. Next, we'll talk about inheritance. In object-oriented programming, objects are often very similar. They share common logic, but they are not entirely the same. So how do we reuse the common logic and extract the unique logic into a separate class? One way to achieve this is inheritance. It means that you create a child class by deriving from another parent class. This way, you form a hierarchy. The child class reuses all fields and methods of the parent class and can additionally implement its own unique part. So we already know the power of inheritance, but there is a potential problem. Let's say we have a parent class and a few child classes which inherit from it. Sometimes we want to use a collection, for example, a list, which contains a mix of all these classes. This can be used by using polymorphism. Simply put, polymorphism gives a way to use a class exactly like its parent, so there's no confusion with mixing types. But each child class keeps its own methods as they are. This typically happens by defining a parent interface to be reused. The interface outlines a bunch of common methods. Then each child class implements its own version of these methods. Anytime a collection or a method expects an instance of the parent, where common methods are outlined, the language takes care of evaluating the right implementation of the common method, regardless of which child is passed. Take a look at that sketch of a geometric figures implementation. They reuse a common interface for calculating surface, area, and perimeter. Having these three figures inherit the parent figure interface lets you create a list of mixed triangles, circles, and rectangles, and treat them like the same type of object. Then, if this list attempts to calculate the surface for an element, the correct method is found and executed. If the element is a triangle, triangle's calculation surface method is called. If it's a circle, then circle's calculate surface method is called, and so on. If you have a function which operates with a figure by using its parameter, you don't have to define it 3 times, once for a triangle, circle, and rectangle. You can define it once and accept the figure as an argument. Whether you pass a triangle, circle, or a rectangle, as long as they implement calculate parameter, the type doesn't matter. There will be more examples for using an interface in the code smells section later on. So on a really high level, we can say encapsulation means hide the data. Inheritance can be shortened to extend data and behavior. Polymorphism is the ability to take multiple forms, and abstraction provides templates to be implemented. Applying those principles in your test automation code will be of great help and make your life much easier by making your code easier to read, understand, and maintain. Angie Jones has a great talk with examples on how to apply them in test automation. A link to that talk is in the resource section. Let's talk about code smells, but actually not this kind of smell, but more like this. But what are code smells? One way to look at smells is with respect to principles and quality. Smells are certain structures in the code that indicate violation of fundamental design principles and negatively impact design quality. Code smells are usually not bugs. They are not technically incorrect and do not prevent the program from functioning. Instead, they indicate weaknesses in design that may slow down development or increase the risk of bugs or failures in the future. Bad code smells can be an indicator of factors that contribute to technical debt. Let's talk about a code smell example. The long class. The class at the very right of the slide has nearly 500 lines, and it probably isn't the longest class that exists. Still, it causes some problems. No single responsibility. Instead, it is taking on too much responsibility. It's hard to find things. It's difficult to maintain. There's a lot of private nested code, which is hard to unit test because it has no public interface. It also does not fit in my head. Martin Fowler, who provides this real-world example, says about this class, it's bloated and convoluted and impossible to fit in my head. This has created a nasty feedback loop. Because this code is so hard to reason about, refactoring will take more time and energy than I have. So I'll put up with it even longer, even though it means I can't even make small changes anymore because it takes so long for me to understand the code's current state and decide where the change should go. So try to avoid long classes. Another code smell is too many arguments. This means objects or methods need too many arguments to work. Problems that too many arguments cause are low maintainability and reuse and coupling. This is an example of too many arguments. But how to solve this? This is one possible solution. In order to achieve it, you should relate arguments and group them. You should favor real-world mappings. That means how to group them in real world and how to group the arguments in cohesive objects. If a function gets too many arguments, some of them might be related to the class construction, which is a design smell too. Since coupling is a potential side effect of too many arguments Since coupling is a potential side effect of the too many arguments smell, let's talk about coupling next. Tight coupling is when two objects are so dependent on one another's data and/or functions that modifying one requires modifying the other. When two objects are too tightly coupled, making changes to code can be a nightmare, and you're more likely to introduce bugs with every change. In this case, worker and bike are tightly coupled. What if one day you wanted to drive a car instead of a bike for your commute? You'd have to go into the worker class and replace all bike-related code with car-related code. It's messy and prone to errors. You can loosen coupling by adding a layer of abstraction. In this case, the worker class doesn't just want to drive bikes, but also cars and maybe trucks, possibly even scooters. Those are all vehicles, aren't they? So create a vehicle interface, which allows you to insert and replace different vehicle types as desired. By the way, I promised you another example for polymorphism earlier when talking about the basic principles of object-oriented programming. Well, here it is. Another code smell is duplicated code. Duplicate code means you perform the same exact logic in multiple unrelated areas of your program. Later, you realize you need to modify that logic, but don't remember all the places where you implemented it. You end up changing it in only 5 out of 8 places, resulting in buggy and inconsistent behaviors. Duplicate code is a prime candidate for being turned into a function or method. For example, let's say you're developing a chat application and you write this. Somewhere else in the code, you realize you need to perform the same as the user online check. Instead of copy-pasting the loop, you can pull it out into a method. Now, anywhere in your code, you can use the isUserOnline check. If you ever need to modify this logic, you can tweak the method and it'll apply everywhere it's called. One of the symptoms of object-oriented programming is the lack of switch or case statements, or a cascade of if-else statements. Switch statements bear the risk of duplicated code and they are an anti-pattern to the open-closed principles. That means that entities should be open for extension, but closed for modification. Imagine that we have some client class that calculates the area and perimeter of particular geometrical shapes. This code is clearly a poor design that limits the current client to only work with 3 types of shapes. There are usually several places in the code where the behavior slightly deviates and these switch statements are present, e.g. in calculate area and calculate perimeter methods. It's even worse case is if we work with objects where the switch is replaced by multiple instance of conditions. To improve the design, you can make square, rectangle, and circle have a common root, meaning that they either extend the same class, such as abstract shape, or that they implement a common interface, such as shape. Then you can eliminate the switch statement code smell very easily. You replace it with polymorphism. And such refactoring simplifies the client code. It also allows for easy extensibility by implementations of other shapes without changing a single line of client code. Another way of looking at it is from the responsibility point of view. Why should the client be responsible for calculating the area or the perimeter, or have a knowledge about shapes' internals, e.g. number of sides, radius, etc.? It is the responsibility of each shape, and all that the client needs to know is that a shape has a perimeter and area. Other types of code smells are not communicating the intent, or comments explaining hard to read code, and plenty more. Code smells can be avoided by applying clean code and object-oriented programming principles. Clean what, you might say? Code is clean if it can be understood easily by everyone on the team. Clean code can be read and enhanced by a developer other than its original author. With understandability comes readability, changeability, extensibility, and maintainability. It consists of rules and principles to follow in order to achieve clean code without smells. Martin Golding's famous quote is, "Always code as if the guy who will ultimately maintain your code will be a brutal psychopath who knows where you live." Writing clean code makes it easier to understand the code, and is necessary to create successful test automation code that you can maintain. Programmers are authors, and your target group is not a computer. These are other programmers or test automation engineers and you. To quote Martin Fowler, "Any fool can write computer understandable code. Good programmers write code that people can understand." To be able to write clean code, you should train your mind for some time. The hardest part is just the beginning. But as time goes on and the skill set gets better, writing clean code is readability. So even the smallest things, such as changing your naming habits, make the biggest difference. According to the clean code idea, there are some general rules to follow. Follow standard conventions. Use meaningful names. Keep it simple. The Boy Scout rule. And many, many more. Let's have a closer look at some of them. Let me quote Bob Martin's Clean Code book on following standard conventions. Every team should follow a coding standard based on common industry norms. This coding standard should specify things like where to declare instance variables, how to name classes, methods, and variables, where to put braces, and so on. The team should not need a document to describe these conventions. because their code provides examples. Everyone on the team should follow these conventions. This means that each team member must be mature enough to realize that it doesn't matter a whit where you put your braces, so long as you all agree on where to put them. Names are everywhere in software. We name our variables, our functions, our arguments, classes, and packages. We name our source files and the directories that contain them. We name our jar files and war files. We name and name and name. Because we do so much of it, we'd better do it well. I will only present a few rules for naming. You can find more of these in the resource section of the slides. Use intention revealing names. It is easy to say that names should reveal intent. Choosing good names takes time, but saves more than it takes. So take care with your names and change them when you find better ones. Everyone who reads your code, including you, will be happier if you do. Use pronounceable names. If you can't pronounce it, you can't discuss it without sounding like an idiot. Well, over here on the BCR3CNT, we have a PSCK int. See? This matters because programming is a social activity. Use searchable names. Single letter names and numeric constants have a particular problem in that they are not easy to locate across a body of text. Single letter names can only be used as local variables inside short methods. The length of a name should correspond to the size of its scope. If a variable or constant might be seen or used in multiple places in a body of code, it is imperative to give it a search-friendly name. Classes and objects should have a noun or noun phrase names like customer, wiki page, account, or a trespasser. Avoid words like manager, processor, data, or info in the name of a class. Also, a class name should not be a verb. Don't be cute. Will they know what the function named Holy Hand Grenade is supposed to do? Sure, it's cute, but maybe in this case, delete items might be a better name. Choose clarity over entertainment value. Say what you mean what you say. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. A design principle originating from the US Navy that goes back to the 1960s already. It states that most systems should be kept as simple as possible. Unnecessary complexity should be avoided. The question to ask when you're writing code is, can this be written in a simpler way? Simple code is less prone to bugs and is easier to read and understand for you and the people who'll be working on the code in the future, including yourself. Keeping things simple is, ironically, not simple. It requires abstract thinking. It requires knowledge of the domain you're working on. It requires knowledge of the code, the framework, and the language you're working with. And it also requires experience. Next rule to discuss is the Boy Scout rule, which can be summarized as leave the code cleaner than you found it, meaning that every time that we make a change in our code base, make an improvement in the code. The rule of the Boy Scouts is always leave the campground cleaner than you found it. When you find a mess on the ground, clean it. Doesn't matter who did it. Your job is to always leave the ground cleaner for the next campers. There are many ways to apply the Boy Scout rule to your code. It doesn't have to be something big. You can rename a variable to a more meaningful name, get rid of a small duplication, or break up a long function. There are some more principles and rules to follow, such as try, don't repeat yourself, solid, the source code structure, and many, many more. Next topic I want to talk about is design patterns. A design pattern is a general, reusable solution to a commonly occurring problem within a given context in software design. Design patterns can speed up the development process by providing tested, proven development paradigms. They also help to prevent hidden subtle issues that often are detected only late in the development process. Furthermore, they also improve code readability for coders, test automation engineers, and architects who are familiar with the patterns. Maybe the best known design pattern in test automation is the page object model, or in short, POM. It models the application under test, thus keep the tests independent from the implementation details of the software under test, and reduces maintenance efforts when the application changes. The screenplay pattern fulfills a similar purpose. For test data generation, the object mother pattern can be a good choice. Let's talk about test data or test data management and the differences on test data management when automating your tests and when testing manually. When testing manually, in most cases, the test data is entered by the tester on the fly, mostly shortly before or even during the test execution. Either the tester knows which data is required to execute a test, or it's mentioned as a precondition in the documentation of the test. This on-the-fly approach is not feasible for automated tests. Automated tests rely on certain data that they require as a precondition for successful automation. Imagine using a shared test environment, and the automated tests assume a certain set of data to be available in the system. In case someone modified or deleted that data, the automated tests will fail. This is a no-go, and thus, for automated tests, you need to have the test data under control. There are two commonly used strategies to ensure your automated tests have the data available they rely on. First one is you ensure that all data for all tests is available in the system, either on database level, e.g. by loading a certain backup, or by running a script prior to the test execution that inserts all necessary data for all automated tests into the system at once. Second strategy is each test creates its very own data as part of its test setup. Also, after the test execution, all created data should be deleted again to not pollute the system under test. Which strategy of managing test data you prefer depends on your project and environment. This was Don't Be a Fool with a Tool, fundamental knowledge for proper test automation. Before I close the session, let's quickly recap what I presented. First of all, have a strategy. Asking questions and using models can help to build it. Following object-oriented programming principles and clean code principles and using design patterns helps a lot to avoid code smells. Manage your test data properly. As said, in the duration of this talk, I could not cover the topics in detail, but that wasn't the purpose of this talk. The intention was to present strategies and approaches to make your test automation successful, and you can further study and research these topics on your own. I will share the link to the slides on Twitter and LinkedIn. At the very end, there's a resource section with links to articles and talks for your further learnings. This was my talk. Many thanks for your attention. I hope you found some useful bits for your work, and I'm now happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, Christian, thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
Before we get to the list of questions, I'd like to ask a personal question. Yeah,
sure.
The last piece of code I wrote was in 2001. It was written in a programming language very much like COBOL, so a procedural-based language. And when I started looking at, and I missed the whole object-oriented revolution. Then I became something else. I became a tester. And now when I'm starting to look at object orientation, I find it very, very hard conceptually to understand. Do you have any resource that really explains it in such a simple way that it's so important to learn how to use object-oriented principles to write good code. Yeah, because I learned that while doing my own attempts at test automation. I started realizing why it's so important to write with good principles. But it's such a painful, for me, it was very painful to take that first step to really start to understand what is this all about.
I totally feel you. Mainly because my professor at university who taught object-oriented principles totally had misunderstood the concept.
Yeah.
Thus taught it in the wrong way. So it took me also quite a while. The latest resource that I consumed was the Java course by Angie Jones on Test Automation University. I think it has been referenced a couple of times today already. So she's explaining Java, and if I recall correctly, also the principles behind. But this is something like for all principles and techniques that I presented, and also others in programming. What is of great help for me when watching a tutorial, when reading a book and not understanding, I turn on the computer, I turn up my IDE, and I play around with that code. Tinkering around with the code, with the principles, helps me personally very, very much to understand it. So not just reading a textbook, but having your computer aside and trying it out.
When you got to clean code and all the rest of it, that's almost like universal rules. Yeah, I like the quote there about imagine you're writing code for the programmers. That was so much the key, because we used to work in even those days in distributed teams and used to make a fix at a client because they had the code base, their own code base. You had the system, but it was implemented everywhere. You had to go and fix it everywhere back in the day. And basically, every time you made a fix, you just had to think about, okay, the guy that comes in next to this client and has to look at this code and try and change this code, I write the code for him so he can understand what I did and how it worked.
Totally.
So that was a really key thing. And really, you got a lot of bad feedback from your peers if you wrote unclean code. So I would definitely say it's very, very key, and a more simple thing to maybe get your head around. Because you might be the guy that comes in 3 weeks later, you forgot what you did, and you're looking at this code again, you go, oh my God, what's this do? So definitely.
Totally. And it's not like 50, 60 years back where you just had a couple of 100 kilobytes. Storage is so cheap. So if it takes 10 or 15 lines to write a readable method, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go to everybody else's questions now. So David, it's pretty simple to write smelly code because it simply works. So why bother? How do you teach your test developers to embrace these design patterns?
Well, I can try to convince them. I can explain the benefits of cleaning up that mess and so on and so forth. But if there's one thing I learned over maybe the last 10 or 15 years, it's that people in some cases need to make their own experiences, their own failures, and draw their own conclusions, their own learnings from their own failures. So if someone is totally not willing to write clean code to apply those principles, even if it's also for the better for him, like we just said, 6 months later, you get back to your own code and you don't understand it anymore. There is this saying, when I wrote this, only God and I understand the code. Now only God does. So, and you can try to convince them. It has clear advantages, which to me are pretty obvious. And if someone doesn't want to simply accept that, then be it. Then he has to learn from his own failures.
Yes, I guess so. So make him always maybe do the maintenance on his own code, and then he'll maybe realize that he should have left a few comments in there to explain exactly what's going on. As you say, keep it simple is another key one. Yeah. Okay. So the next question from, this is a nice one. I guess somebody like me panicked at the beginning because you start seeing code snippets and say, okay, how can I take a shortcut? Is codeless automation viable?
The vendors are trying to sell those for 20, 25 years. It started with Record and Playback and so on and so forth. They have their advantages, yes. If you really have simple cases, simple scenarios that you want to automate, but if there's some logic in or some more complex things, it's very often it's either difficult to implement it with those tools, or you again need to understand the principles behind. To my understanding, the easier the tool is to use, the easier it is, the more of the underlying complexity is be hidden, is be abstract, so it has been abstracted away, so you cannot access it anymore. That's why it's so simple to use, but you also only have access to simple things. And if you want to get it more complex, you need to understand the complex principles behind this. There's no way around it until artificial intelligence really gets there, which I think will take some more time. I've written a small blog post about this. I can share it on my Twitter and LinkedIn later on if you want to.
Yeah. And okay, I'll ask if we still have time. I'd like to get you talking about AI in your opinion. But the next question is from Maros. How to persuade team members to keep all? It's pretty much the same question, but especially in a high-paced agile environment where speed is the key. How do you get people to? How do you convince them to, slow down and think about things?
I don't know about the context about this question, but very often in teams transitioning to agile, to my experience, people are a bit resistant to change, which is typically human. So my advice would be to go with small steps. Don't come. I've seen Christian's presentation. He mentions 30 principles. I want you to apply them all tomorrow. Propose to start with something small. Maybe say I've seen this presentation, or I know about some clean code principles or design patterns or whatever. I think those could help us. Present 3 or 4, maybe in the retrospective or something, or for the next sprint, and let the team decide on which one they think would be of use. And then you just go with one. And if the team successfully implemented one and they see the benefit, you go for the next one. So it's since you mentioned the agile environment, it's about small steps.
Yeah.
So try one after the other, and don't come with the clean code book and say, I want you all to consider this next week.
So classic approach, low hanging fruit, quick wins, where you get buy-in because people can see it has benefit.
Absolutely.
Get them to approach the harder things. Okay.
And also very often your teammates might think that, you have an idea, maybe you think we now need to rename all our classes. That would be the best idea ever. And majority of the team thinks another pattern or another idea would be way better. So let the team discuss and decide.
Yeah. Okay.
It's always important to get the team's buy-in.
Okay. And the last question here on Slido. Another one's just jumped in. But any recommendation for one place, one source of information? What's the best single source of information?
There's plenty. There's plenty.
Is there one place I can go? Or
so what I did, I think I didn't mention that explicitly. I will share the slides on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Maybe also Tesena can share them on their homepage or something. The last 3 slides of the presentation, which I did not show, is full of links that I used for the resource, or that I used for the. God, I lost my English totally. That I used for my research to build these presentations, to find the code examples and so on and so forth. So. For nearly everything I talked about, there are links at the end of the slides.
Okay, that's
great. I will share those. So that's maybe a starting point.
Yeah. Okay.
For clean code, of course, there's the clean code book. There are many books on refactoring and how to refactor legacy code into a clean code base, and how to refactor messy code to use proper design patterns. There are way more design patterns than the ones that I presented. There are way more clean code principles than I presented, way more code smells. But I think starting with the links in that presentation will be a good start.
Okay, great. Okay, and the last one here is from Maros, saying thank you for the presentation. I have definitely the same view as you, and nice summary, because I think I agree. I've never seen that sort of presentation on a testing conference where someone talks about quality of code and writing maintainable code. I think that's usually telling you how to implement something or play with some tool, but never such.
Yeah, actually, this is what I had to learn the hard way. I wished to have seen that presentation like 15 years ago when I started with test automation.
Yeah, but I think that one thing to now, maybe for many of us, a lot of it means nothing at all. Yeah, for me, but it's something that keep in your mind and say, okay, what did Christian talk about that time? I'm struggling with this. Maybe I can go back and look at that. And
sure. You don't need to remember or memorize everything of it now. It's if you in 3 years think, oh, this guy told something useful, and look up the slides, there was something that's then I'm totally happy if some bits stay in your mind in your brain.
My last question: what do you think about AI in test automation?
I think it's not there yet. I'm not an AI expert, totally not. But what you see in the news, well, not specifically IT or testing news, but to properly train an AI, I think that's the big issue, because it's biased the same way as its training data is biased. So not so sure. I think it will. AI has great possibilities. Also, if you just look at machine learning, there are awesome things out there. But I think it's not there yet. It's doing a great job, I think, in scans to recognize cancer and stuff where doctors fail. But that's, I think, relatively easy topics, because there's a lot of training data to properly train the AI. For testing, I don't see it yet.
Good point. Yeah.
I think skilled exploratory testers will not be out of job soon.
Definitely not. Okay, Christian, we've gone 5 minutes over. Thank you very much. It was a fantastic.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, and I hope we'll see you again on Tesena Fest sometime in the future. Hopefully in person.
Looking forward to it very much.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so we're closing Tesena Fest for today. That was Christian. Once again, thank you for our partners and sponsors who make this fest possible. Thanks to my production team who are working in the background and running up and down the corridor telling me I'm doing something wrong and keeping me in line. And most of all, thanks to the 19 awesome presenters who've taken time to share their experiences and their learnings with all of you. I think it's already been a fantastic event. I'm really looking forward to next week, where we're going to have a deep dive into 3 topics. So the topics for next week are automating Flutter apps. I now need to go and find out what a Flutter app is. And then we have integration tests with Docker test containers. I think that's a very hot topic these days. And why wasn't this tested? The classic question that we sometimes get, unfortunately. So I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget that we have workshops running in parallel with the Fest. 2 we've already completed. And upcoming is Christoph Borner with manual to automated testing for conversational AI, a topic that we're looking at in Tesena as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And Tarek King, a beginner's guide to AI-driven testing, and also a very hot topic these days. So we're looking forward to seeing what's coming up there. And finally, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you all next week. So bye-bye.